radio listeners who talk about their personal problems, but now everyone's now gone on to podcast.
Hello there. I'm wrecked. I'm just back from a walk and I'll show you the video in a moment. I'm finding these days, and it's obviously something to do with my age, that after a walk, when I got off the bus after the walk, my hip's sore. It's not that sore, it's just a little bit sore. It makes me initially kind of hobble a little bit, but then it sort of wears off, you know. It's maybe sitting down that's doing it. It's maybe the sitting down that's doing the damage and not the walking. Yeah, just top of the femur, the ball top of the femur, where it goes into the socket of the pelvis. Not that I want to use too many technical terms. Hip, I think, is probably the word. That's a thing that's not going to get easier, I don't think. Yeah, it's an issue. I can't see me doing many kind of really long walks these days, to be honest. Or 2 days with a walk each day, 2 days in a row. I can't see that happening, realistically speaking. But such is life. When I'm in here in the kitchen in the mornings, I quite like to have the radio on, BBC Radio Scotland, and I'm always strangely fascinated by a feature they have on, I think probably every morning during the week anyway. I think it's called Thought for the Day. Whoever does Thought for the Day, I think they only have a minute. I think it's rigid, you know. Not unless there's maybe some kind of margin of error, like 2 settings either way or something, but I think the timing's pretty rigid. And it's invariably always a religious person that gives the thought for the day, some deep meaningful words that make us all think. It's not always a religious person, but in most cases I think it is. And it's generally, I mean, it's every religion under the sun is represented, if that's the term. But what fascinates me is that when it's Christians, and it's the way they introduce the word Jesus into their little kind of talk. I find riveting, because no matter how they start off their thought for the day, and it can be about any subject under the sun, at some point during that minute they'll bring in Jesus. And how they do that is, I think, the aspect of the whole thing that I find fascinating. Anyway, I better not say too much or I'll get in trouble. Right, here we go. Barrel of beer. 1. Right, it's this thing here. I do turn this. Turn. Oh, a lot of gas there. 2, pull this bit out, put this down over here. What's it? Right, pull, I'm pulling. Come on, that. Right, 3, hold on, just 3, turn. Right, can't be that hard. Turn. Brace yourself. Which way do we turn? That way, right, okay. There we go. A good beer. How easy is that? This is the Tempest Brewing Company's Pale Armadillo, 3.8%, so it's not too strong, and it's actually quite a nice beer. And I like these mini kegs because you you can kind of pretend you're the barman for a wee while. Now, that's alright. I think I'll close this just to preserve any gas for the next one. Don't know if that's what you're meant to do, but there we go. So I think the lesson for this video is that whatever your goal during the day's walk, sometimes you don't always reach that goal. You don't quite manage it. And that's just a fact of life. Whatever your goals are in life, sometimes they just can't manage to do them. And that's just the way it is. And it's a funny thing, but I'm sure Jesus had goals too. Here's the video. Hello there. Well, we've got a very cold morning. It's 0 or -1. There's frost on the ground. Freezing. Public transport's a bit hit and miss at the moment because of this Omicron version of COVID. A lot of train drivers, for example, are off because they've tested positive for Omicron. And I thought it'd be best just to kind of stay reasonably near home as opposed to travelling afar. So I'm in Lennox Forest. I got off a bus at Clachan of Campsie, which is very well served with buses. Buses are every half hour or something. And you may have seen parts of this area in other videos. I think in some other videos I've either been walking through this area going to and from Bughts and Clachan of Campsie, or just wandering around in Lennox Forest itself and looking out for, I think I was looking for a quarry at one point. I know where it is, but at the time I couldn't find it. I think I was kidding myself on it that time because the ground was a bit soft and maybe I just didn't want to get too dirty or something like that. So today I'm going in search of a particular feature called Pattie's Bughts, which kind of sounds a wee bit, I mean, it brings to mind visions of lots of patties lined up bearing their bottoms, but it's not that, you'll be glad to know. And it's not so much a feature, it's just an area of ground that has for hundreds of years been called Pattie's Bughts, and I'll explain more later as to why it might have been called that, assuming that is that we find it. I think I passed it once before, I think decades ago. I've got a good idea where it should be, given that it's not something like a building or anything, it's just going to be a bit of ground. Am I going to recognise it? Let's find out. Well, I can't go any further. It's sometimes difficult to get a handle on what's going on or where you are even when there's so much forestry operation. A lot of this bit of forest here that was here has been felled, and there seems to be new trees, and there's forestry operation ongoing. So it makes it kind of challenging, shall we say. But I can't go any further. It's a mixture of, there's a deer fence there, there's a very, very deep drainage ditch, and it's just, you just can't walk over this sort of ground where trees were at one time felled. It's just too dangerous. There's huge holes in the ground. It's a nightmare. You just can't do it. So, this is as far as I can go. I'm in the right sort of area because as I'm walking along the path here, there's quite a few stones. It suggests quarry in the area. Craig End Steading is just sort of down below there. So the quarry is sort of, or was rather, that sort of area, another side of the deer fence. And Pattie's Bughts was just on the other side of the quarry. I mean, Pattie's Bughts, it's mentioned in the first edition Ordnance Survey map. I think it's 1859 or something like that. And it probably had that name for a long time before that, probably hundreds of years in fact. The quarry was more recent, and in fact I think the quarry, when you look at Ordnance Survey maps, the quarry kind of nibbled off a little bit of Pattie's Bughts. And I wanted to visit Pattie's Bughts because it's just a strange name, It's an excuse to get out and about, that's all it is. I've not found it, doesn't really matter, I've had a wee bit of exercise. The name, I mean obviously Pattie sounds like somebody's name, and it undoubtedly is somebody's name. There's some doubt as to whether it might have been short for Patricia or a kind of form of Patrick or son of Patrick or something. I'm inclined to think there was a Patrick involved at one time. And the word Bughts, Bughts, I think it comes from a Scots word similar to that, Bouts or Butts or something like that. And it apparently means a fold for keeping sheep, or a fold for milking ewes or something to do with sheep. But when you look at the first edition Ordnance Survey map, this whole area of land is marshy, and it still is today. Good for nothing other than planting trees. But the area that's named Pattie's Bughts, it isn't marshy. It's got little kind of tree symbols on it. So obviously a nicer spot, maybe a good spot to stick your sheep on and keep them there, or maybe a better sort of spot for them to feed or something. I'm not sure. Probably used by Craig End Farm down below, although I'm not sure. I'm inclined to think Craig End Farm's maybe not that old. It is on a map dating to 1817. I kind of see it maybe dating to the late 18th century or something like that. And I think the tag Pattie's Bughts, and I'm guessing, is older. So it probably relates to some other steading in the area. Just staying on the subject of Ordnance Survey, on checking Ordnance Survey maps online, I think Ordnance Survey have made an error. It's not something they want to do, but I dare say it happens occasionally. Because if you go onto a particular online site and you look at this area and you kind of enlarge the image so that you're effectively going from one scale of Ordnance Survey map to another, then what you find is that with the kind of I'm never sure whether to say larger or smaller as far as map scales are concerned. But anyway, you kind of pull out from the shot and you're looking at a kind of wider area. Pattie's Bughts isn't shown. But then when you zoom in to the to the scale where Pattie's Bughts is shown, at that point, I think that's where they've made an error. Because they have got the name Pattie's Bughts on an area of the map that isn't Pattie's Bughts. I think they've made a mistake. I mean, obviously in naming something like that in more modern maps, you're referring to older maps. You're not going to suddenly put the name somewhere else, because in older maps, this is where it's telling you a bit of land was called Pattie's Bughts. But then when you zoom in further to kind of larger scale maps, if that's the term, they have correctly positioned the name. It's just in that one map scale, and of course I do feel it is my duty to tell them. What's a man got to do in life other than hassle Ordnance Survey and tell them they've made a blunder? The view behind me is just out of this world. In fact, this view of the Campsie Fells, it's just out of this world. It's beautiful and worth coming here just for that. You can sort of see this view from any number of occasions, and I think in one or two of my other videos I kind of finished in a similar view, although taken from a different location in the kind of rough area. It's in essence the same view. You're looking towards a little rocky volcanic plug of Dunglass, I think it is. And beyond that you've got mountains far, far away. So we'll just end here. I'll end with some music and some nice shots of the surrounding scenery. I'm becoming a bit of an expert in not finding things. I didn't find the old quarry the last time I was in Lennox Forest, and now I haven't found Pattie's Bughts. Sometimes that's the way it goes. But I've enjoyed the walk. I'm Eddie Burns. Take care, and I'll see you again.